Hello, everyone. I'm Patrick Pallas on behalf of my co-founders, the infamous Tom Martin and Kat Moon. Welcome to the American Legal Technology Awards State of the Legal Industry webinar. We have really an amazing panel with us today, and I'm going to introduce all of them to you in just a minute. But first, let me start here. I'm happy to tell you that our 23 amazing judges at the American Legal Technology Awards have poured through hundreds of unique nominations for our awards and have picked the top 3 nominees in each category. And the categories are access to justice, courts, enterprise, individual technology, law department, law firm, and startup. So thank you to our judges who have worked tirelessly to pour through all of these nominations and pick out the top 3 finalists. And congratulations to your finalists. You know who you are. We don't have time to read them all, but this will get exciting because we'll be announcing the winners and their runners up in each category live for the first time in 3 years at the American Legal Technology Awards Gala in Nashville, October 9th, Sunday night at the Gaylord Resort in their grand ballroom the night before CleoCon 2022. And I have to tell you this too, because, I think Tom, Kat, and I, we didn't know how this was going to go in our first time through. We were just very optimistic and really excited about doing it. We are sold out of tickets for the gala. But as soon as we sold out, our wait list started growing. And so we added a few more tables with the help of the hotel and our event coordinator. So if you don't have a ticket and you want to go, you can buy a ticket right now by the end of this webinar. And then when they're gone again. And there's not many. So go do it. Join us. We are also honored to be kicking off the biggest CleoCon ever. And our friend Jack Newton and Clio, one of our sponsors, is offering everyone at this webinar a special deal. And Tom, if you'd put up our special deal, it's a $300 discount right now if you sign up by the end of the day. You can find out more at americanlegaltechnology.com and at cliocloudconference.com/register. So there it is. So many ways to come join us and make this seminar come alive. So today we have a panel to discuss the state of the industry and our annual webinar. I mean, a lot has happened since these awards began 3 years ago, and it seems like the entire profession has been catapulted forward in time, right? Do you all feel this way? It has been a time of change. And as a result, I tell you, I have a lot of questions that I'm dying to hear answered from each of you. And I'm just going to toss out some of the things I want to talk about today, and then we'll zero in. But let me just throw these things out to warm you up, panelists, and you, audience, some of the things I'd like to know about. Maybe you would too. Since the beginning of COVID, firms have been going virtual and offices have been emptying out, and now they seem to be coming back. But here's the question: where do we end up? And how about this? Utah and Arizona. Okay, the regulation changes happened, time has passed, and we're settling in. And the first data has been released, and consumer complaints appear to be equal or lower than other bars. So what does that mean to other firms inside and outside of these states? And there's new startups and new legal innovation being introduced in the market. I'm curious, panelists, who are you watching? And our law firm culture, is it still driving success now that everyone is at home, or is this really kind of minimize the need for culture? Marketing, I know this will be questions that our marketing gurus will be able to answer, but who's getting it right and who's missing out in this new marketing world? And there are so many ways to get paid, to attract clients, to maintain clients, and communicate. I'm wondering if consumer-centered law firms have been built and are a new model, and they really will endure, and they really are doing better than everyone else. And last but not least, team, this is the question that I'm going to hold for the very end for all of you to answer. What are your predictions for 2023, and what will success look like? All right. So much to talk about, and everyone has a prediction for 2023. Let's not lose another minute. Can I introduce you to our panelists? I'll do this one at a time, and I've asked each one of the panelists to talk about a particular question. But let me start with Jack Newton. I'm sure that Jack is familiar to everyone. He is the CEO of Clio. He's a nationally recognized author, podcaster, CEO. He's the author of the Client-Centered Law Firm, which has been a bestseller. He's the host of Daily Matters. And Jack, I've lost track of how many podcasts you've done, but it was somewhere well over 100. I know that those are out there. Here's kind of a cool piece of information. Jack's company in Clio is a unicorn. It's kind of a funny word for a company, but a unicorn, which means he's been valued at over $1 billion, which is unique and one of the first, if not the first, I think, actually in legal, and also a centaur. And I know what's a centaur. A centaur is a company that has 100 million in annual recurring income. So Clio is now both a unicorn and a centaur. It's a big, big step for legal, and thank you for leading the way. Jack, I'm going to turn this over to you with this question. ClioCon's 10 days away. Can you give us a sneak peek about the legal trends report? Or are you going to hold it all back until we get there? But what I really want to know is how the legal space is changing, and how consumer expectations are driving those, and what technology is really making that transformation. So if that's not too much to ask, that's all I want to know. Go ahead.
No, that's great, Patrick. And thanks for the introduction. Thanks for holding these awards, which I think are a really important moment for the legal industry. And we're excited to have them as an amazing party to kick off 2 days of ClioCon. Let me quickly share my screen here, Patrick. I do have a few slides to walk through to help answer that question. And I will give a little sneak peek of what we'll be talking about in the opening keynote and the launch of the 2022 Legal Trends Report in Nashville in just under 2 weeks. I want to really quickly introduce Clio for anyone that may not be familiar with us in the audience. We're a cloud-based legal practice management and legal CRM system. We're used by over 150,000 legal professionals around the world in over 100 countries globally. We're recommended by over 90 bar associations. That's growing by the month. And we started off in legal practice management, and in the more recent years have expanded into client intake, CRM, and billing and payments. And one of the very unique aspects of the Clio platform is that it is a platform. We have over 200 app integration partners that tie into our system, and an API that many of our partners and law firms that leverage Clio have integrated with and leveraged to really tailor Clio to their needs. When we launched in 2008, we were the first cloud-based practice management system in the world. It was an audacious idea at one point, and now, of course, it's generally accepted wisdom that if you're a modern lawyer, you need to be practicing in the cloud. So with that little bit of retrospective completed, let's look forward to what the future of legal looks like. And I'm going to talk about a few of the trends that I think will be shaping the next few years. And as Patrick pointed out, we saw in a lot of ways a decade of legal transformation over the course of the last 2 years. And the trends I'll be talking about are the trends I've been talking about for years now as being the foundational trends that are continuing to reshape legal in really profound ways. The first is the consumerization of legal services. And what I mean by the consumerization of legal services is that the line between what we consider a consumer and what we consider a legal client is ultimately going away. Legal consumers, whether they're coming from the corporate side or the consumer side, are consumers of technology in their day-to-day lives, and their expectations of legal technology and of lawyers are being shaped by the daily interactions they have with the apps around them. We're also seeing legal demand moving online in a really profound way, which is also helping drive this consumerization of legal services. The majority of legal service demand already starts with a Google search, and I'm sure we'll hear Mark talk about this in his remarks as well. But this shift to online demand is what we've seen happen over the last few years. We're going to see this evolve to other sources of demand like TikTok. We're going to see home audio search start to creep up in terms of a source of legal demand. So you need to think about how you're capturing the demand for legal search of the future. And if you just think about if you had to get a home maintenance project done lately, what did your process look like for finding that handyman or handy woman that's going to help you out with your project? The reality is that it's starting with an online search, and you're going with somebody that is local and somebody that has good reviews. And really the search for most consumers in terms of how they choose which lawyer to work with looks more or less the same. Along with the demand moving online, we're seeing a rapidly shifting expectation in terms of frictionless experience for consumers. The new age of consumer does not want to have to phone you to make an appointment for an initial consultation. They expect an online intake system to make that completely seamless. We're experiencing frictionless touch points in all of our day-to-day technology interactions, whether it's with Amazon or Netflix or Uber, and consumers are bringing those expectations with them to their legal interactions. And that rate of change is accelerating thanks to the way that COVID has reshaped the way consumers do so many things online. The second thing to realize is when we're talking about demand moving online, it's more specific than just moving online to both desktop and mobile. It is moving primarily to mobile. We're already seeing the majority of web traffic across the globe being generated by mobile devices. This is on a steep incline as well. So we need to think about how our website, how every interaction with our law firm looks on a 6-inch screen. If you're optimized for a desktop experience, you're going to be losing out more than half of the consumers that are looking for lawyers today. We need to be thinking about how we're capturing consumers with Google My Business from the demand side. We need to be thinking about how we make that online intake experience completely frictionless. And again, this is not necessarily a prediction of the future. This is a statement of the current state of the world that we need to adapt to really quickly. We're also seeing once clients become a client of a law firm, not just in the intake process, but while the matter is being executed, they expect online updates, they expect text messages, they expect the frictionless experience of a mobile app to help support them through that legal interaction. And lawyers are well equipped to do this. Most lawyers are already doing work from their smartphones, but there's a huge opportunity to augment and upgrade the level of quality and the effortless experiences that lawyers are delivering to their clients through their mobile devices. Patrick, you touched on the idea of client-centered legal service delivery, and another major trend I see coming down the pike is innovation in the service models for the delivery of legal services. Again, this is in the main through line of the consumerization of legal services, but in particular, how we think about pricing and packaging and the interaction models consumers are using to work with their lawyers. Technology is touching every aspect of this. There's great examples like Hello Divorce completely innovating on a self-serve and productized legal model. We're seeing law firms leverage virtual chat from firms like Ruby. We're seeing products like ClearBrief doing an amazing job of bringing prediction and AI to the legal space. Fidu is creating subscription legal services, and Lawyaw is doing an amazing job of helping automate document workflows and document automation in general. Which leads me to one of my last predictions, which is that what will be automated in the future. One of my favorite Jeff Bezos sayings is, "Your margin is my opportunity." And he speaks to the competitive landscape in that way, knowing that he's running the most efficient engine of e-commerce on the planet. I think law firms need to take a similar view on the opportunity ahead of them and look at every opportunity for automating workflows, automating document production, automating the intake process for clients. And the law firms that figure out how to build that automation will be the law firms that win in the future. Pricing and packaging are due for a major overhaul. We're seeing LegalZoom already doing a great job of reinventing pricing models and consumerizing legal services. But we're seeing law firms figure out how to do this as well. And again, Hello Divorce is a great example of this. And we're seeing Fidu, an app that integrates with the Clio app ecosystem, do an amazing job of bringing productized legal services to the fore in legal. And my last prediction is I really think over the last decade, we've seen legal practice management in the cloud become the de facto standard for what a modern law firm is using. And what we're going to see over the next 5 years is a more fulsome shift of every legal workflow moving to the cloud. This is not just about moving your LPM to the cloud. This is about moving your law firm to the cloud. And the initial touch point will start with a Google search, and every touch point beyond that will be moved from the bricks and mortar world to the online world. So I hope I've whetted your appetite to hear more about some of what the future of legal looks like. It's what we spend 2 days on. We'll be welcoming thousands of innovative lawyers to Nashville, Tennessee on October 10th and 11th. As Patrick mentioned, we've got a special discount code you all can use, and we'll have another slide on that at the end. And we'll be launching the Legal Trends Report at that conference as well. And here's a final reminder of that discount code that's available. So thank you. Happy to follow up with anyone in the Q&A session if we have time for that.
Yeah, we'll have time for questions when we finish a couple of questions for the panel. Jack, thank you very much, and excited about ClioCon coming. This is a big deal. A lot happening on a short period of time. Let me introduce you to our next panelist, Drew Armstrong. And again, Drew is so well known in the community. She's the CEO of AffiniPay, and you may know them best as the parent company of LawPay. And in the beginning of this year, they also became the parent company of MyCase, both sponsors for the American Legal Technology Awards. That's a big step forward, Drew, and I'm looking forward to hearing about this. Drew has done this for 17 years in consumer and product technology development and management. She has a long history of working to create consumer experiences and fueling technology growth and market expansion. As you can see by her companies, the growth going on there. She is innovative. She focuses on diversity and inclusion and has done so many great things in this community. Drew, thank you very much for joining us. Can I give you a question to address?
Yes, I love that.
Where are you seeing the biggest changes in the use of technology?
So I think, first of all, I just want to say I really appreciated Jack's presentation on kind of what they see coming down the pike. And I would say we completely agree, right? And one of the things we think a lot about, and I think he spoke into, is there's a whole segment of solo and small firms that have already embraced technology, right? And are fully off to the races. In our market work, about a third of solo and small practitioners have already kind of leapt in. They've adopted digital payments, they've adopted practice management. And I think a lot of the tech trends that he spoke into are kind of what are the next waves of value unlock that you get as you really embrace technology. And I think anyone sitting on this panel is probably a true believer in terms of the value unlock. I'd like to flip that on its head. What we think a lot about is the other 2/3 that have not yet embraced even practice management. One of the things that we see is digital payments is probably the first piece of legal technology that a lot of law firms adopt. It's why we have 70,000 law firms using our platform today. Next, they adopt practice management. And so a big question in our minds is, what's really going to drive that adoption? What's really going to drive a firm or a practitioner saying, I'm ready to take the leap, right? And I think that's something that we expect to see over the next 3 to 5 years. So if today about 30% of solo and small practitioners are using legal practice management, and about 30% of payments are made digitally today, we expect both of those to go to 70 to 90% in the next 3 to 5 years. So I would say, I think there's a lot of law firms out there saying like, well, how do I even dive in? What's going to get me over the hump? And I think once they get there, a lot of the value that Jack spoke into will exist for them. But I'd say the other thing that we're thinking a lot about is the recession. And I know that that's going to be a topic that we're going to talk about, but it's, unless you don't check your phone or the news in the morning, it's almost impossible not to read about doom and gloom in the markets. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I would say that our internal data is kind of showing us that winter has arrived to the legal profession as well. So invoice volume has come down anywhere from 10 to 15% in the past 6 months. So that's just what our customers by account on average are invoicing their customers. We continue to see a debit at its lowest level of usage. So people are shifting away from using cash towards using credit, and it's lower than pre-pandemic levels. And so I think one of the questions that we think a lot about is, on one hand, you expect people to start adopting technology, and I would say it has huge abilities to unlock value in the firm, both from efficiencies and growth. But on the flip side, to do that in the context of a recession, I think is going to drive a different set of adoption behaviors. So some of the things that we think a lot about are kind of number one, moving past the one size fits all around technology and practice management, right? We see firms increasingly kind of waiting until they find a solution that really fits their specific technology needs. Now that may be practice area driven. So we, one of our companies in our portfolio is DocketWise, and they've done a phenomenal job solving very acutely the document automation needs of the immigration firm, right? And I think that's why you continue to see, year over year, 50+% growth for that firm. Another thing that we see is that there's probably a third of the market that's never going to go full practice management. And so I think different firms are going to adopt different levels of technology depending on how they want to do their workflow, right? And we see a lot of firms saying, yes, we want some of these business management tools, but we don't necessarily need everything in one tech stack, kind of this one size fits all. I liken it to the unbundling of the CD, where you're going kind of, maybe I like Madonna's Like a Virgin, but I'm not sure I want all those B-sides that no one brought forward into this decade. I hopefully some of the audience knows what I'm talking about in terms of B-sides. And so I'd say that we're thinking a lot about the fact that there's just very kind of significant fundamental adoption still to go in our market. And then I think once you get past that, then there's a lot more value to unlock. So those are some of the big things that we see coming, and I'll save some of my more specific predictions for 2023.
I love that. Drew, thank you very much. So that's so interesting. I love hearing you and Jack side by side on these things, because you guys are such drivers of this profession, and it's really interesting hearing your take. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for sponsoring the American Legal Technology Award.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So let me turn to Anne Cosimano, and we're so glad to have you here. Anne is the general counsel, and I referred to her last week as the CEO. She said, "Well, thank you, but I'm not the CEO." But she's the general counsel for AROG. She directs the company's legal, regulatory, compliance, and attorney relations department. And I'll tell you, one of the cool things about Anne is her absolute dedication to access to justice. She understands this gap and has put her company, AROG, fully in play to help bridge that gap with the things that she does. And I love her passion for access to justice to solve the problems. There's a quote that I saw of hers that I just wanted to read about her and AROG. It says, "Our product supports a social good and helps people at a time that is most stressful for them." And I think that's exactly right. And kudos to you for jumping in. Anne is a member of the Iowa State Bar. Go Iowa. Glad to have you here representing, member of the ABA and Association of Corporate Counsels. And I have one important question for you. You have a network of like over 15,000 lawyers. I'm wondering how you see this law firm model changing and what challenges you're anticipating that you see from high above at AROG.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate the question.
Yeah.
Wanted to start off, first of all, for those of you that aren't familiar with what AROG does and who we are a legal insurance company. That's legal insurance that's offered as an employee benefit. Our mission as an organization is to help everyone, not just those that can afford it, protect their legal rights. And we do that through the provision of a legal plan as a voluntary employee benefit. So it covers life's normal, everyday legal issues. And we solve those by connecting our members to a network of over 15,000 attorneys. They represent and help our members resolve those legal issues, and then we pay the attorneys directly under our set fee schedule. So rather than try to guess at what our attorneys are seeing in the future, or how they're practicing, we do an annual survey of all of our attorneys and ask them where they are and how things are going and what their predictions are for how they're going to practice in the future. And I'll share with you some of what they told us this year. So we were happy to have over 2,000 of our attorneys that participated in our survey. And really to gather what they think is different now. And a lot of what they had to share with us was really how they're changing from a pre-COVID world to a post-COVID world, and what they think that's going to do for the future. So one of the things that we saw a focus on was how they prefer to work. Where pre-COVID, there was a strong preference for in-office, brick and mortar, every day, show up to the office, schedule in-person appointments with their clients. We are now seeing that over half, 56% of our attorneys prefer to operate in a hybrid model, only meeting in person when they feel that it's necessary, but meeting virtually when it allows. And what we gathered from their comments was that's not just because that's what's most convenient for them, it's also what their clients prefer. Clients have now gotten accustomed to the convenience of being able to operate in this virtual world. Many of them are doing it in their employment capacity, so why not in their interactions with other professionals? We found that though they have this strong preference for virtual, most of the attorneys are still planning on maintaining a brick and mortar. Over 73% want to still keep their in-office location to have those meetings in person when they feel like that is relevant and most important, and then do remote work where it makes sense. But 7% are aiming to vacate that physical office and work wholly remote. And I wonder how much that will continue to increase over time. And I think that's going to follow really consumer expectations of whether or not they're really attached to that brick and mortar location. Then we asked about what's going on with the courts. What are they seeing there? And they feel like those have definitely been affected by COVID also, that 53% are reporting that in-person proceedings or virtual proceedings are still continuing. And 34% that nearly everything related to court has moved to virtual, and some believing that it's going to remain that way for the foreseeable future. You see it with a lot of the judges, that the judges now that they've gotten kind of a taste of how that can work and how efficient that can be for courtroom interactions, that they are likely to remain there. So more appearances in person, but a surprisingly high number of judges remaining virtual. Point of interest for the last year, this was the top 10 legal matters that our attorneys handled. So you can see still a heavy focus from consumers on getting their estate planning house in order, a lot of property transfers, consumer protection, divorce, and so on. And then really industry networking. So how are we as attorneys, how often do we think we're going to want to get together in person? And we did see a lot of virtual events. I attended Clio virtually last year, loved it, great content. I plan to attend in person this year. 55% of the respondents said that they are going to plan to attend an industry social event. Virtually, 51 said that they're going to attend in person, and some they're going to do both. They're going to go ahead and go hybrid for that as well. So I thought it was really interesting to see how really COVID and everything in that nature has impacted how the attorneys are going to practice and what they are viewing for future. So share more, and kind of like Drew said, I'll share some more details or save some more details for later for some of the questions.
Yeah, that is so interesting. You know, we spend so much time kind of guessing and asking friends and talking at conferences, but having these this data from large companies like, Clio and LawPay in my case, and Arog. So enlightening. Thank you very much, Anne, for sharing that. So our final panelist is Mark Homer. And Mark, as many of you know, is the CEO of GNGF, Get Noticed, Get Found. Great company, incredible marketing company. Mark is so good at what he does in marketing. He's a best-selling author. His book, Online Law Practice Strategies, is a must-read. He also has done his own podcast, Your Law Firm is a Business, Take It to the Next Level. I love his podcast. I had the pleasure of being on it. Does a really, really great job. He writes and speaks regularly on digital marketing, company culture, and leadership. I have seen what his marketing skills have produced, and very happy to have GNGF as a sponsor for the American Legal Technology Awards. Mark, let me ask you this, because you're uniquely qualified here, I think. Last year, you talked about investing in marketing and the metrics to help kind of meet the challenges that come with these new consumer expectations. So I'm wondering, what's changed? Should we double down and invest more this year? Where are we? Help me out.
Yeah, I have a few slides I'll get to in a second to talk about that. But yeah, I mean, last year I talked about how it, like fortunately, Drew brought up the R word, right? Recession. So we talked about, in a downturn. So we had COVID as a this perfect data point to look at a lot of things, and saw that people who invested in marketing did well. And so like we're heading into a recession, the same kind of thing I think applies. So I wanted to show a couple data points, because I looked at my team here. Let me share this slide here. If you can see what we're looking at.
Yep, we're on.
All right. So, this was from kind of what I shared last year a little bit. So we had the data that, Clio was putting out on the average law firm, what they were seeing, right? And I think LawPay had some similar data. So it was like, there was a massive dip, right? I mean, invoices, accounts receivable, everything went down in that, time frame. And then things started, working their way back out slowly. So I asked my team, this was again last year, hey, go look at our data and say, for people who are investing in marketing, because we say that marketing should make it through, and it's always good to invest in a downturn and it'll come out stronger. What happened? And so we saw that, leads on average were, increased, year over year. If you take into account, they dipped a little bit, but they were still better than the previous year for those firms that invested. So I challenged the team again. I said, all right, find me somebody who actually started this, because we had people come to us and say, okay, Mark, I'm finally going to do that marketing stuff you've been talking about for 10 years. You're telling me to do it now. I have time, because their business was drying up. So we had some people, that started right in kind of, started middle of COVID there. So, here's a firm that kind of started in the 2020 and, started investing in marketing. You can see they had, a little bit of growth. This is just their website traffic. So it's not like exactly leads, but it's a good bellwether. And, we're good enough to know that tracks well. But you can see that, they put the investment in, and over time, as they invested, they got a growth in their marketing results. So, one of the things I just want to reiterate is that, yes, it was important then, but, if we are going in a recession, just remember, it's a good time. If you have some extra time, maybe write some more content. If you have some time, look into your tools and systems. So that is something to reiterate is investing in marketing is a good thing, and companies that are strong come out stronger out of a recession. We see it over and over and over. I think I gave the Kellogg's and Post example from the Depression last time we talked a year ago. So it's a great Harvard business case study if you ever want to go look at it, but it just shows that, time after time after time, companies that invest into a downturn do well. So that's part one. The other part was the tools. And, I kind of talked a little bit about this. We have this graphic now that really talks about, I think for years, the legal industry focused on the service and fulfillment in their technology play, whether that's practice management software, time and billing, all these things, right? So we spent so much time there. And for years, I'm like, well, businesses in general start with the customer relationship management. And then, yeah, we work on some other things, but, like we all the other businesses outside of legal were working on this CRM thing. And it was good to see over the last few years that that's starting to come around, right? So you had Clio Grow, you had Lawmatics, you had some, a lot of other players out there that were starting to say, hey, the consumer is involved in your firm much more than just that service delivery. We continued to see people starting to invest over the last couple of years in legal CRMs is the kind of term I hear thrown around a lot now, but CRMs, right? So thinking about the customer holistically, not just when they're a client for, the few months, few years or whatever, and looking at that whole awareness cycle. So again, I always go back to the data. And so I asked my team, and by the way, here's just an example of what you can do, and I'll come back to this. We can talk later. But here's the data of, a couple of firms that we worked with, implementing their CRM into their marketing, making sure the intake systems, which by the way, intake is just another word for sales, right? So that, the sales systems at the firm, right, were so dialed into their marketing that there was going to be a success, right? So we had help them implement their systems and tools that were a good connection to the outside world with marketing into the firm. And here's an example of somebody at the top where we did a big email blast, did some email work through their CRM, and waited and looked at the data. And so yeah, you saw some traffic there, but what we waited on was the data in the CRM. Okay, what leads came in, what became clients, what was the revenue of those clients? Is it worth doing something like this again? And then we're able to look at the data to say, all right, now let's keep doing that. And you can see what's happening now that we're able to leverage that data. So we took time, right, to use the data in these CRM systems that are connected to the practice management system, connected to the tools that give us the actual invoices of a lead that came in that turned into a client that got invoices, right? So now we can look at that holistic data. As a marketer, this is a gold mine, right? So I can do so much more for our clients with this information. So, and the bottom chart, same kind of thing. You can look oranges last year, blues this year, that you can see. I'll let you guess kind of when they started implementing a CRM system, so you can see there that, this is where, I think the opportunity is for a lot of people right now is if you're investing in marketing, you are really missing out if you're not incorporating, these other tools to help you with that intake process. Because if you're not doing that part well, if you don't have the data to know that the person who's answering the phone sucks at answering the phone or whatever, right? If you don't have this data point, then you're just wasting money on some of the marketing spend. And that just bugs us like crazy. So, I just want to reiterate that I know we talked about tools and systems, and Jack talked about that, the customer expectations, calendaring. I mean, come on, like if you can't offer an online calendar on your website, this is a personal experience. I just had a doctor send me to a specialist, and I went to their website and it said, schedule your appointment. Awesome. I'm a busy guy. I travel a lot. It's hard to find those few little hours. It's a lot easier for me to handle that. I click on the button. It says, to schedule your appointment, call this phone number. I called twice, sat on hold for 20 minutes, and just finally called back to my doctor and said, give me another specialist. I'm not doing it, right? So like these kind of tools, like as a customer, we just expect it, right? You're doing this in the rest of your life, so do it for your law firm.
Mark, thank you. I love watching the faces of everybody else in the panel nodding as you say some of these things. Like, yep, check that box. He's right. That's exactly right. Thank you for that and that insight. Are you guys ready to answer some questions and jump into this? The beauty of like a podcast is you're going to have coffee with one of you. The beauty of a webinar is I get to have coffee with all of you. And we can sit down and just talk about this. So I have questions for everybody, not anybody, everybody. And I'd really like to hear the differences in opinion, or maybe the concurrences on some of these things. But with your perspective at the table today, I'm excited to hear your thoughts about this. And let me just start this. You all know that legal employment rates are higher right now than they've ever been in the history of law. There is more people employed in law than we've ever had in history. And you'd think that's got to mean massive growth. That's really good. But there's a lot of churning. People aren't coming into a law firm and staying there. They're bumping out in 6 months or maybe a year. And then they come into other firms that are underemployed and need more people, and they're doing twice the work, and then they're unhappy and firm cultures take a hit. And you're trying to hire people and it's hard to hire them, and you have to interview and hire in the first 20 minutes. Otherwise you'll lose them off to somebody else. There's this whole legal economy of trying to find people to employ and retain that has been so challenging. And I'm wondering, what kind of advice do you have, or what are you seeing for law firms who simply want to hire and grow like we used to do? That's open to anybody. Jack, I see you nodding. Yeah, I know you have a couple people employed at Clio. Maybe you've seen this this issue before.
Well, I'm nodding just because I think it's such a on point question, Patrick, especially as we are on the verge of entering a recession or already in a recession, depending on your definition of what a recession is. But there's no question that there's been a huge boom in the number of lawyers practicing. To your comment, in this year's LTR, we've seen revenues, number of hours billed, number of hours collected up 25 to 30% since pre-pandemic norms. So it's been an enormous boom, but we've also seen what the great resignation that has hit, I think tech especially hard, a huge amount of turnover and movement in employees in the technology industry. We have almost 900 people working at Clio today. So, we saw a significant amount of turnover in our staff and saw increased ability to recruit over the course of the last 6 months as we started entering this tech downturn. And I think there's some parallel version of this happening in the legal space. We see in this year's LTR data that almost 20% of lawyers had changed jobs over the course of the last 2 years, and 10% of lawyers were thinking about changing jobs in the next 6 months. So a huge amount of turnover that's happened and pending. What's most interesting to me, though, in the data that we'll be talking about next week at ClioCon, or in a week and a half, is the data that talks about why people are changing jobs. And what's very surprising is that the quality of life and quality of work conditions ranked at 37% as one of the primary reasons that people were changing their jobs, which was exactly equal with pay. And then dislike of their direct manager or dislike of other staff was the second most significant reason. So collectively, you've got these kind of qualitative things like enjoying your work environment, thinking you've got work-life balance, liking working with your manager, actually dominating more direct quantitative factors like pay in terms of why people are moving jobs. So I think it's a very interesting challenge to law firms to think much more holistically than they may have thought in the past about how do you recruit and retain. It used to just be write a bigger check. And that is no longer the answer. That is so far down on the list in terms of what will actually persuade somebody to move. Yes, it's a factor. And yes, especially with the economic backdrop where we're looking at heading down, pay matters, but these quality of life factors and the quality of work environment factors are actually much more important than they've ever been in the past.
Team, I want to just add to this. I want to keep the same question on the table because I have you respond, but I want to add just one more piece of this. If all that is true, culture is more important than ever. And yet it is so hard to scale culture, and it's so hard to hire. Somebody doesn't know much about your company and you're trying to hire them, like, we have a great culture, come join us, right? I'm wondering how you see culture playing in hiring and retaining, and how you're seeing this play out, trying to maintain and grow your firm in this employment supply chain problem we're having. Drew, Ann, I'm dying to hear your thoughts. You both see a lot of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think I totally agree with what Jack was saying, that, and I think it dovetails on some of the other points that were made earlier. So one, how do we emerge from the pandemic, and, really thinking through answering the question, are you remote first? Are you hybrid? Are you actually office first with some flexibility? And I think number one, that's oftentimes the number one question that we get when we're recruiting talent. And I would imagine it's the same for a law firm. And so I think having the ability to answer that question really honestly and authentically, and also doing it in a way that understands that there will be implications were you to go kind of office first, right? And so I think that's one big area to focus on as we emerge from the pandemic. And so many firms have embraced the hybrid or remote first model, right? And so the fundamental competitive landscape has shifted. I think two, the point around getting much clearer on culture. And frankly, usually that also means like your core values and how you think about kind of living your core values, how much are they operationalized in your firm? I think we tend to think that kind of culture and values are pretty soft, right? It's like foosball tables, it's beer on tap, it's, neon signs, it's t-shirts. But in reality, I think culture and core values and being kind of mission driven usually take multiple years to kind of build and implement. Obviously, I think the smaller the firm, probably the faster you could do it. But I think being able to really clearly articulate to anyone that you're trying to hire what those are, how you live them, kind of really going back to them, because oftentimes that's the core of kind of what employees are experiencing day to day in the firm. So I think we're all in this period of transition. And so I think your original question was, what's your advice, right? And I think number one is being really clear on how you think you're going to operate going forward. What are your core values? And then I would say focusing on the team that you have, right? And really looking honestly about what is your turnover and why, and setting some goals there, because it's just like a client. It's always better to keep a client you have than to try to go get a new client. I'm sure Mark tells people that all the time. It's try to keep the ones you got. And I think the same thing is true with employees in this environment.
I love that. And you have a unique perspective in all this too, with you. I'm going to say employing. You can check me on that. 15,000 plus lawyers out there. You get to see both what's happening in your company and what's happening in the microcosm of every small firm out there. How do we grow? How do we continue to springboard and take advantage of the opportunities that are happening with technology and the new tools and the demand? What do we need to do?
I looked at a study recently that was done by the International Bar Association. They surveyed over 3,000 attorneys, and 1 in 5 attorneys under the age of 40 were considering leaving the profession in the next 5 years. And the part of the survey that I found most interesting wasn't the number that were leaving, although very interesting, but it was those that were going to stay. What were the reasons that they were giving for why they were going to stay? Why would they stay in the profession? Why would they stay with their current employer? And the reasons, it's just really mirrors what Drew just shared. The number one reason that was given was flexibility in where, how, and when work gets done. Attorneys, like all other professionals, I feel like right now, or employees, are looking for flexibility in where and how to perform their work, and the freedom to do that when and how it makes sense for them. Another was opportunities to travel. Thought that was interesting. I think people have pent up demand for travel and having experiences in those jobs, and then a commitment to change. And that change could be climate change. It can be human rights, and having a diverse and inclusive workforce was also reported. The diverse and inclusive workforce is one that we have chosen at AROG to make one of our pillars and values, and given it a great amount of focus over the last 2+ years, not only in developing an internal diversity, equity, and inclusion committee at AROG, and having a lot of programming, education, commitment around the roles and the values that we promoted in the mission of that committee, but also in deciding that we needed to expand that and look at our product offerings and see what we can provide as insurance coverages for our many clients and their employees that could be experiencing issues as a result of their diverse characteristics. So is around gender identity change, funeral directives, things that would allow people with those diverse needs to be able to have their legal rights protected. And I think employees are looking for that. I think they're craving somewhere where they feel like they have a sense of belonging, where they can show up as at their employer or their workplace, feeling like they're accepted for who they are.
Yeah, such important stuff. I mean, none of us can grow unless we have a culture that's supportive, unless we're attracting people and retaining people. And if we have that, then we can do everything else. What is it they say? culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? I think that's more true than ever. Mark, I would be remiss if I didn't throw you a marketing bone here. Last year, we talked a lot about investing in metrics, investing in marketing. Like, this is the time, do it. Like, the stock market's low, buy. You were like, the economy is slowed. We're in COVID. Double down on marketing. When we come back out of this, you're going to be killing it. So let's retool. Here we are, 2022, a little more midway through. You're our market broker. How do we invest?
Yeah, I think, and I had that slide in there that I kind of skipped over. Right now, obviously, as I said earlier, invest in marketing, always invest in marketing. I think, even going back to the culture question there, like, know what you're asking your lawyers you're hiring to do. Like, if you're expecting them to go generate a ton of business, that's a different hire than somebody who you want to execute work. If you're the lead gen engine, then you can hire a different person, right, who's looking for something different. So I think that's important to understand. The actual what to do in marketing, of course, since I'm with a whole bunch of lawyers out there, it depends. But I am going to say, unfortunately, and people won't like to hear this, but it has become incredibly more fragmented, right? So where the consumer is. So like what we work on doing here, right, is like understanding legal consumers and what they're looking for. The surprising thing that I think I've come to over the past like 10 years or so is that the legal consumer is really a potential legal consumer, doesn't even often know they have a legal problem, right? So how do you reach that audience? Yeah. How do you get the information out there? If somebody is, searching for an answer to an issue that they have no idea, they're not typing the word lawyer in, they're just searching. We go to Google just to get answers, right? If they're searching, whether it's Google or they're just following their social media feed and seeing somebody that they follow talk about a topic, how do you get in that channel, wherever it is, search, social, even video advertising now, right? You can stream on Hulu and these kind of things, but how do you get in front of the consumer who doesn't even know they have a legal problem and explain to them, we're here to help. We're the answer to that problem. And, here's how we help you. Like, if you can figure that out, then you're going to find a whole bunch of clients. You're not going to compete for clients. You're going to get a whole bunch of new clients.
Yeah, it's funny. In my firm, we just did a commercial on that very topic. When do you know you have a legal issue, and what does legal issue look like? Yeah, you're exactly right. So I want to make sure we're running out of time very quickly. We only have a few minutes left. And even though I have a lot more questions I want to chat with you all about, I promised at the beginning that we'd take predictions. So before we open this up to a little Q&A from our audience, I am very excited to hear about your predictions. Take a minute or two. We don't have, actually, maybe a minute. Maybe you get 60-second predictions. Anne, would you like to kick us off on this?
Happy to. So one of the things that I think is there, if not should be, needs to be a focus in the future by attorneys. I think maybe expanded focus on cybersecurity. I think it's something that clients are becoming more and more aware of, as maybe they're victims or they have family members that are victims of either a data security breach or a phishing scam, and that they're going to be looking at all of their providers to see how they're handling their personal information. And then maybe just a plug that, and it's shameless, I will say, legal insurance is kind of a thing that's here to stay. Over 75% of Fortune 100 and over 55% of Fortune 500 companies now have some type of a legal plan. If you haven't looked into it before, look into maybe joining. There are several of them that are in those organizations. It's a no-cost way for you to gain client referrals from us for the largest employers around the country. And I just only continue to see it grow.
Love it. Perfect. Thank you, Anne. Mark, your predictions for 2023.
So, I'm going to kind of, jump off one of the things I talked about. This is going to be a hopeful prediction. I'm hoping that law firms out there in 23 start really adopting the consumer journey using tools like CRM and other systems to better understand how people interact and want to interact with their firm, to learn and grow their processes, their marketing, their whatever, to be better at every step of the way, whether that's efficiency or just being better customer sat and getting more referrals. All that stuff comes understanding that full journey. And I think there's a lot of tools and systems out there that can help. And I'm hoping for a big adoption next year because we saw some good traction this year.
Yeah, perfect. Drew, your company has made bold leaps this year, and you have a clear vision of where you're headed. And I assume you're taking all of us with you. Let me hear your predictions for 2023.
So I would say one, given the context that I do believe we're in a recession, hopefully it's short and shallow. I would say one, I think we are going to see continued tech adoption. One of the questions in the chat was, but how are people going to have money to spend on technology? I think one prediction is law firms and lawyers really asking the hard question, which is what's the ROI, right? Whether am I gaining efficiency? Am I solving a core business problem? It can be spending on marketing to grow, but I think increasingly attorneys are going to ask that question, which is, what's the total cost of adopting this? And then how is it really going to move the needle? And so I think way fewer nice to have sexy new technologies, way more need to have. It's really solving a core business problem for me. I think two, folks are going to be expected to be met where they are, right? And so whether that's their practice specific needs, that's solution sets that are not a full LPM, but a subset of products, I think that's going to be really critical, that they actually be able to buy what they need, not what we want to sell them. And then I would say, number three is I see huge opportunity for further digitization and integration of financial services. So also shameless plug, we're launching our first lending product, and it's been a game changer for our clients, being able to take on clients that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to, being able to get funded up front and the client get a loan for a really critical service. It's super critical in certain practices like immigration, right? They absolutely need the services. And we're seeing that people are able to fund invoices that are like 3 to 4 times a normal credit card ticket and pay down that loan for 12 to 18 months. And we've had 100% payback, which I think it speaks to how essential the legal services are that are being funded. So those are my 3 predictions. And I'm going to say also shout out for cybersecurity. I think everyone should be worried about that. So
thank you. Jack, I see we're actually on the last minute, which means we're probably not going to get a chance to do Q&As from the audience, but I'll split the last seconds with you. You take a minute and I'll take 15 seconds. Ready? What's your prediction for 2023?
All right, I'll do the lightning round here, Patrick.
Thank you.
Number one, and I'll underscore just a few points I made in my presentation. The consumerization of legal services is going to continue. We're seeing legal demand move online. As Mark pointed out, we need to be thinking about the entire client journey and how every touch point in that journey becomes effortless. And that's often going to involve making that touch point digital and moving it to the cloud. I also think we're going to see lawyers continue to tap into the latent legal market. The 77% of legal issues that are not solved by lawyers today is a massive opportunity for lawyers to think innovatively, especially in a downturn, about how they can tap into this massive amount of legal demand. As Mark was pointing out, it's not always searching with personal injury lawyer in Los Angeles. This is the long tail of legal demand that is a huge opportunity. I believe in the downturn, we saw this in our data in the LTR from COVID-19 and another point Mark made really well. This is a time to invest. We will see firms emerge from this downturn stronger than when they entered it. We'll likewise see some weaken and come out as losers. And this is often a great time to invest, to consolidate, to double down on technology and double down on your competitive advantage. So I think there's a real opportunity for firms that want to invest to enter the next this recession with an investment and a growth mindset and emerge stronger than when they entered it.
Yeah, great takeaways. Thank you very much. And you know what? A big thank you to our panelists, Jack Newton and Drew Armstrong and Consumerization and Mark Homer. We couldn't have done this seminar. We couldn't do the American Legal Technology Awards without you. We will see you all live at the American Legal Technology Awards October 9th at the Gaylord in Nashville. If you don't have your tickets, TikTok. Right now, go get them. And if you don't have your tickets to ClioCon right now, we got them. Go get them. They're waiting for you right there. So excited to see you all in person. So excited to see you all in Nashville. On behalf of the American Legal Technology Awards and my friends and co-founders, Tom Martin and Kat Moon, I love you guys. You're amazing. I want to thank my panelists. I want to thank all of you for your nominations and thank our judges. We're going to see you all in a little more than 10 days. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your day. And thanks for joining us today for the American Technology Awards State of the Industry webinar.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.